Hi, Mike. First, thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to talk about your journey, your thoughts on technology, your experience. We really appreciate you being here at the conference, so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay, if you want, we can start with the questions.
Sure.
First time in Colombia?
It is. I've been to South America a couple times before, but first time in Colombia. Medellin's just so beautiful. The weather is amazing, and I really enjoyed it.
Did you like the experience?
Oh yeah. And it smells like flowers everywhere you go. It's really wonderful.
This is the city of flowers.
Yes.
There is a festival of flowers, and the people at the streets really beautiful. Okay, you have an amazing background. Mm-hmm. And you started to work with medical images like 20 years ago. Why? What was your motivation? Why did you start it at that moment?
So yeah, in grad school, I was studying computer music actually. So it was this cool sort of interdisciplinary program where you were doing music and you were doing either computer science or engineering or whatever. And I specialized then in optical sheet music recognition. So the university I was at had this collection of 19,000 pieces of sheet music that they had scanned, and they wanted to be able to use machine learning to actually read what the music was and then build a search engine out of that. Now this was 2000, 2001, and the technology of machine learning is not what it is today. But it was still, learned a lot, and that's how when I started using Python and sort of got into that world, and that was. Yeah.
That's great.
Got started, yeah.
Also, you spent a lot of time working as a senior engineer. For you, what is to be a senior engineer?
So I think what makes a senior different from a junior is connecting what you're doing to the real world in some way. Now that could either be connecting it to the business of your company that you work for, or it could be connecting it to the needs of users in the real world, or the scientific things that are hard to do. How do you get there? How do you learn to do there? So I think the step from junior to senior is like understanding that it's not just about the code, that it's about who the code is serving and how you help those people and how you help those people interact and connect. And that's my take on sort of what levels
how
up.
to grow
in
that way.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned you started to work in some things related to music, and also we know you was a radio producer. How was that?
Yeah. So that's something I've just been doing for about a year. I recently moved from the Washington, D.C. area to a much smaller town in Maryland, and I was at a party and met the guy who runs the local radio station there, and he mentioned that they needed someone to program a big band show. And I used to do a lot of jazz back in the day. I haven't in about 20 years. I've been a jazz fan my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so it was just sort of this fun thing. And so now every week I find the latest big band jazz albums, and then I try to find older things that connect to it and put it all together. And it's been really fun. It's just totally a hobby outside of work to, use a different part of my brain and be musical and stuff. Yeah.
The last years we have some keynotes also to enjoy the music and make some relation between the music and code. Do you think there is a relation there?
I do. I think that the appeal, because I've always been interested in both my whole life, and I think the similarity is that there is a certain pattern and structure to music that you have to put all these pieces together, the melody and the harmony and the rhythms, and you put all those things together in sort of a new and interesting way, and that's what makes that's what makes the music meaningful. It makes something new. And code has the similar thing where you are writing source code, but you are also solving problems, and you are also putting that together with what people need, and so it's like this combining things, and then now you have this new thing. So I do sort of feel like they feel like similar tasks in my brain. I don't know if everyone feels that way.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
We feel the same.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing. Also, you had spending some time being core developer in Python.
Mm-hmm.
How was that experience? That is a big responsibility.
Yeah, so I've only had core developer privileges in Python for about, I think, 2, maybe 3 years. So the process to become a core developer in CPython, if you want me to talk about that a little bit, you sort of start by coming to CPython, seeing what problems you think you can solve, looking at existing issues, and then trying to write a few PRs, trying to solve a few problems. And from that, the rest of the core developers are kind of learning how you work. And I think they're looking for, are you thinking through the implications of the change? Like CPython is over 30 years old and it's used by millions of people around the world. So every little change, even if you think this couldn't possibly break for anybody, there's probably someone in the world that it will break for. And so to learn to become a CPython developer is also learning to reason about like how impactful, how risky, how dangerous is this change. And so they're sort of looking for like, can you think about those things? And if you do that long enough, and you also help with bug triaging, so not just writing your own PRs, but helping other people with theirs and things like that. If you do that for a certain amount of time, then an existing core developer can sponsor you. So I got sponsored, and then the whole group votes on it to become one. And then once you sort of have those privileges, I think that there's a few interesting things. So like, first of all, continuing to work on CPython becomes a little bit easier because you can merge your own pull requests, but there's also 2 times a year when all the core developers meet. There's the language summit, which is usually at PyCon US. It's usually the day before. And then they also do a developer sprint in the fall. And those are like sort of great opportunities to meet in person and really kind of get a lot done. I would say like, the bulk of the planning about the big new things that are coming to Python happen at those 2 events. So being able to participate in those is really, really fun and really feels like, you're making a difference. So that's what I enjoy about it.
That's really great, and thank you so much for that. All the people enjoy to work in Python, and that's because the work all the people in the core team make. So it's amazing.
Thank you.
Also, now you are manager at Microsoft, right? Mm-hmm. How is your day-by-day work? What are your projects there? How do you relate Python? Because the people sometimes think like Microsoft is something really different to Python, and that is not. Mm-hmm. But how is that?
So I've been at Microsoft for about 3.5 years, working on the faster CPython project. So I was the manager of the team that's doing the faster CPython effort, which was basically an effort to improve the performance of the Python interpreter and the main Python runtime. There's obviously a bunch of other projects that help with Python performance, like Numba, and you're probably using NumPy for your array calculations, and Cython, all these things. Our project is a little different because we're working on CPython itself, wow. And we're also trying to not cut any corners. So a lot of earlier attempts to make Python run faster, the first thing they would do is say, this like 10% of the language is really hard to make faster, or it makes doing the rest of it really hard, so we're going to ignore that. And then you basically end up with something that isn't fully Python anymore. And my theory is that a lot of those projects fail because now they're not compatible with Python, and so it's hard to get that critical mass of users that want to keep using it. So our project was a little different, that we were trying not to cut those corners and keep Python working, almost exactly the same. A few very, very small things we would sort of change. And so the team was sort of comprised of various different skill sets. One person wrote his PhD thesis on making Python faster, so obviously he had kind of done this before in a kind of prototype, and we were a lot of what we were doing was turning that prototype into productionalizable, useful thing that everyone could use. And then other people were working on a JIT compiler, so a just-in-time compiler for Python that would turn Python into machine code while you run it, and then that gets faster. And then another person on the team was working on sub-interpreters, which is a way of sort of isolating multiple threads of Python, but they're actually totally isolated, so you don't have race conditions, you don't have sort of conflicts of data between them. And then the last person sort of dealt a lot with like restructuring the compiler to make it more flexible and add new features, make it easier to add new features. So that was kind of the makeup of the team. Unfortunately, about 2 months ago, Microsoft decided that they're no longer going to fund any of that effort.
Okay.
So some of the team was laid off. What I think is really interesting is everybody on that team is continuing to work on Python and continuing to work more or less in the same space they did before. So while it's very, very helpful to have a company like Microsoft paying people full time and you can work really quickly that way, one of the great things about open source is even when that funding comes to an end for business reasons, people can continue that work. And it's not clear, you know, where they're going to end up yet, and I don't want to like say anything, but like it is quite possible that they will end up continuing to work on the same thing, and wouldn't that be nice? And there's sort of nothing stopping that. So that's pretty nice in the sense of we did devote almost 4 years of our life to this, and to feel like it's maybe a change but not an end.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
The contributions continue. And
exactly.
Also the people sometimes feel free to propose new things, not attaching for any company, just for all the people. And that is the base for the communities at the end.
Yeah.
Amazing. Also, you worked at Mozilla also. What was your role there?
So my role there was on the data team. So I led the team there that did client-side telemetry. So what that means is the code that runs in all of Mozilla's various products that collects data about what the user is doing and reports it back to Mozilla. And what was fun there is Mozilla has a very, very different view about data, at least at the time. My information is 3 or 4 years out of date at this point. But at the time that I was there, Mozilla, unlike most of the big tech companies, was very careful and cautious about how they collected data. And so we never had any way of identifying individual users and connecting it to personally identifiable information. So we did kind of know what your browser was doing. We didn't know what websites you were visiting, but we collected enough. The important things to us were, is the browser crashing all of the time? So we would collect enough information to know those sorts of things. Or, what's the most popular version of Windows that people are using? So things that are not super personally identifiable, but are very important to help Mozilla understand where they should devote their efforts and where they should spend their money developing things further. And what was also fun about that work there was, when I got there, each of their products, so Firefox on desktop is a completely separate product from Firefox on iOS and Android, and they had some other products. All of those collected telemetry in a totally different way, and it made it very hard to understand, if someone is using Firefox desktop, are they more likely to use Firefox on Android and all those things, because we couldn't join that data. And so the big part of the work there was moving to a single telemetry system that was collecting all to the same place, so that we could really sort of look at the whole company together. Yeah.
Oh, also that happens observability and a lot of things.
Yeah.
Incredible. You told me about Python, backend manager, data. You worked in a lot of roles and also different companies. What advice could you provide for anyone to want to start in Python and this tech world?
I would say it's really important to the technical side of like learning to use Python and how it works and all of the tools around that. Learning all of that is obviously extremely important. But my advice to young people is always connect it to something else in your life. Or have some other experience that you bring to it. I always enjoy working with engineers who are able to see, oh, this thing that we're about to do is going to be problematic because this is how I see the world as working. So like bringing something else is really important, and don't be so hyper specialized on just writing code and just building software, because you have to build software for the real world and real people. And so any other sort of skill you have, like whether it's being a musician or maybe a psychologist or a poet or a historian, all of those things you can bring to bear on software. And that's where I think it gets really interesting.
Thank you so much. Last question. How is your experience in PyCon Colombia?
I've had such a good time. I mean, it's only been a half a day, but the keynotes were great, and I'm having so many great conversations. I mean, what I think is really interesting actually right now in this time we're in is the conversations I have at conferences seem very close to sci-fi. Everyone is talking about AI and how it's going to change the world, and is it going to change the world or is it not? And it's these sort of very big discussions, whereas maybe like 20 years ago when I started going to conferences, people were talking more about like, I don't know, the nitty gritty of for loops and, and how to, or do you use Emacs or VI? And these, those feel much more grounded in the day-to-day of sitting at your computer.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting at conferences now, people are thinking bigger. They're thinking about what is this future that we're all here creating? And so, it's hard to have those conversations over Teams or Zoom. I work from home, and so it's really great to go to a conference and talk to people in person, and yeah, it's been fun.
That is really great. Thank you so much for being here with us. We really hope you enjoy all the rest of the conference, and also we are aspiring for the stories like you, the journey you made to become a really great developer, great manager. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, let's enjoy the event.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much.